Hello, EduGladiators. Marlena here, and we are back with another podcast. And I am super honored tonight, or for some of you, maybe this afternoon, if you're where our guest is from, to have none other than Zachary Jeans, Impact Matters Guru. And you probably were in that chat. If you know what's good, you were in that chat because he has an amazing chat on Monday evenings about about lots of things. So tell everybody hello, Zachary.
Hey, so yeah, I'm Zachary Jeans, and so Marlena was very gracious to have me on how do you say that? EduGladiators, right?
Yeah.
You're like a gladiator, but you're doing it with education. I have a similar chat on Mondays in the sense that we meet on Twitter and then we have a video conversation with our guests. But our chat is around leadership, but leadership in all kinds of areas. For instance, tonight we were talking about stigmas in the workplace, and specifically about mental health. But we might talk about leading with compassion, or how do you listen inside your organization, like active listening or something like that. So so we lead that community every Mondays. It's an extension from a chat that I used to co-host with Dan Forbes called Lead with Giants. And we've been going since September 26th, when League with Giants passed on to into the sunset after 4.5 years.
Awesome. So we were also honored as EduGladiators to have Zachary lead our chat this past Saturday. And Zachary was really great about providing thoughtful questions about staying on target. So Zachary, can you give us a little insight as to why you chose that topic for EduGladiators? And it was amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so staying on target. So occasionally I actually host my own chat. So, it's community, so I always have guests, but occasionally I have a subject that I really want to get after. And staying on target is one that hit home for me here about 3-4 months ago. And staying on target is just that idea that you're progressing towards your goals, and oftentimes, I don't know about you, but I'll achieve some success, and then I'll just kind of hope that you're kind of drifting towards the rest of it, and really you're drifting away. At least I am. And so I really wanted to get after this concept of how do you stay on target? How do you stay focused on the things which you already know are important to you? You're already achieving some success in, probably, but how do you keep right at that? And for, EduGladiators, teachers, administrators, folks who work with kids, that's something that can kind of get swirled around during the school year, right? There's the testing, or there might be the various snow days that get you off focus, or you get up towards a vacation and then everybody gets all squirrely and wants to leave and they aren't focused. And so you as an educator or an administrator have to stay on focus. So yeah, I was really happy we could explore that.
Well, let me tell you, Zachary, it was a very popular topic, very popular chat for EduGladiators, because you're right. Whether you're in corporate or you're in education, definitely in the education realm, it's hard to stay on target when you are bombarded sometimes with so many other responsibilities and things that you just have to do. So I love the very first question of, what does staying on target mean to you or your organization? And I would just love if you can just explore a little bit more about that question.
You bet. So in my line of work, for instance, so like I advise tech companies mostly in the Salesforce ecosystem. Salesforce is like a software platform, kind of like Microsoft or what have you. And one of my clients is GeoPoint. And GeoPoint is a mapping software. It takes all your data about your clients or whatever, and it puts it on Google Maps. And so when I'm working with, say, GeoPoint, a lot of what I'm doing is self-directed. So I'm trying to come alongside them and assist them. And as we're going through the business year, we'll come up on conferences, and it's up to me to be self-aware, because they're going to ask me. If they have to ask me, then I'm in trouble, because that means I'm not doing my job. So I have to set little micro goals along the way, right? I like to use old-fashioned 3x5 cards. I have some on my desk, and every day I write down a little list of the most important things that I need to do with them, right? Things that I need to do with my Impact Matters community. So just simple list writing, but not just list writing like, hey, I'm going to spend today ideating, right? I'm not just going to like whiteboard my life and then go, man, that felt great. I'm going to go do something else now. But literally checking them off, right? Going down the list and being forceful about that. Staying on target for me means not being satisfied, as I mentioned earlier, with medium-term success. And, you know, little success, we always know there's much more to do, so we kind of keep going. But it's when you hit that middle layer where you're like, yeah, pretty good. You know, I'm probably doing as good or better than a lot of folks around me. Maybe I'll just kinda, you know what I mean? And then it's like you kind of back off, you start to find other things, family or this and that takes your time, and you don't keep going. And so for me, it means not being satisfied with good. You know, like Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. It's like, but seeking after that next layer, right? Being willing to push yourself forward.
Absolutely. And so for those of you that are joining in live right now, you can actually click the live chat feature and actually post your questions for Zachary, and he can answer those. So if you see me glancing down, I'm checking our live feed and want to be sure that we are able to ask those questions to you, Zachary, so folks can hear directly from the Impact Matters guru himself. So one of the questions that we had on Saturday that you posed to the group was about goal setting. And and I know a lot of leaders in education tend to be very vision driven, which I think is very, very important. But to follow up with an action plan, I think is super important. So how does goal setting work? How do we really, what are your favorite tips for either methods or means or mindsets to really help goal setting complement the vision setting?
Sure, sure. So I was a big fan of goals when I was growing up. I got really hooked on that. And one thing that I've realized over life is that goals are like points out in the horizon, right? They're like, you see up there on the hill and you want to hike up and you can see the trail in front of you, but you aren't exactly sure how that trail is going to go between, you know, where you're at there and when you crest the hill. And so goals are knowing that there are these waypoints along the way, and you know a little bit of information about what it looks like because you looked at the map. You know that there's going to be a waterfall or there might be a steep area that you got to go up at some point. And that's goal setting. It's understanding the lay of the land in general, and picking points to walk towards to, and not feeling like you have to summit the entire hill with your first effort. It's taking small chunks and breaking it down and walking towards those. You know that there are folks that do goal setting in the military. There's a number of books written by folks in the, like, say, the Navy SEALs and any of those special forces type folks that go in these extreme situations. Yes, well, what really makes them any more special than another soldier? And really it has to do with the mental stuff. They break down big, giant, scary, tough situations into minutes, into seconds even. How do I accomplish this next moment in this situation? And so you may not be in this pressurized situation in your classroom or in your workplace as maybe in a war zone or in a, you know, a heavy negotiation situation. But when you do achieve these little micro moments, it's celebrating those successes as you're walking forward to those waypoints that you've kind of laid out and mapped. But important part to goal setting, I think, is to realize that life is messy and that it's okay to have the destination out there and to adjust where you're headed. You know, you don't have to like lock in on, I will stand on that rock up there. You might stand over there in the field next to it. It's okay to kind of shift as you're going, and to give yourself permission to do so. Not every time do you shift direction is it like giving up. It might just be you got a little bit farther down, you realize you wanted to go somewhere else. So yeah,
I love that. I love that, because sometimes we feel like, especially for educators, that if we don't reach our goals, that we failed. Either we failed
Yes.
ourselves or
Well,
we
it's all
failed
about
our
measuring, right?
do what now?
Well, a lot of education, right? You got a syllabus,
Right.
you have course requirements, and you want everybody to learn, but at the end of the year, that syllabus, you will get to the end of it or you won't, right? And so you got to push through. And it's kind of scary, right? If you aren't accomplishing, the really the core, the soul of that syllabus, you're just checking boxes, and then you feel like, wow, did this year really go how I had hoped it to go?
So, how important do you think it is? And I know that you're not a teacher per se, but we all teach
Sure.
everyone. Uh, how important do you think it is for us to teach our students how to set goals? What would be the
Yeah.
impact on that?
Well, I look, hopefully, the whole point that we get out of our education is that we start to become self-learners, because we live in a world where more and more nobody's just going to say, hey, do X, Y, and Z at this job and then you'll matriculate up just like you did through school. It's really teaching them to set personal goals for learning and growth, and that once they get into a pattern of the joy of learning something or achieving something, that they realize, hey, that the ancillary credit that I get is that, oh, I got a decent grade in class. But really the joy, what they really get out of it is that I learned something, I achieved a new direction. Because when you gather that understanding, that's what will make you successful in college. That's what will make you successful in any job you go into. It's the desire, imparting that desire, that I like to say, a good leader doesn't make a person drink the water. A good leader helps a person become thirsty. And so
I like
you want
that.
to create a thirst or a hunger, and then once that's there, then you can start serving up what's good to consume as a teacher.
I love that. In the chat, you mentioned that when you talk about setting goals, you start with principles first. Can you
Yes.
share a little bit more about that whole concept?
Yeah. So if you get the principles, and it kind of builds on what I just said, because that in a way is a principle, right? So a principle is a place from which you operate out, right? It has some components of it that create desire, or it's the why you do something. So the what's are the goals, and the why is the place, the principle from which you go out and try and achieve those things. And so getting at a person's curiosity, finding out what they love, that is the first and foremost thing that I'm interested in. I want to get to know who they are and why they are. Once I know that, then me as a teacher, and I love to teach, it's a matter of me discovering, okay, now I know why, now I know what, now I just have to serve up the opportunities that are going to allow them to walk forward and learn. So yeah, it's discovering the principles. If I am not naturally curious about something I'm doing for work, then I know I'm in trouble, because then it's really going to become work. If you're naturally curious about something, then you're just chugging along, and then all of a sudden, oh well, I guess that's done, that project. But if I'm not curious, if I'm not in love with it, then there's something going on in my heart, or maybe I need to shift. Maybe I need to shift my attention right towards something else to do.
Great point. How important is it to have positivity and when you're setting goals and surrounding yourself with positivity?
Yeah, for sure. So like the world's a tough place, and I think we're in this weird place, and at least from what I'm hearing, I have a son, he's 12. He's in an academy, so he actually does school from here. But in his groups and stuff, and I've talked to other folks, I hear a lot of like, well, we want to create barriers around kids. There's so much bullying, there's so much cyberbullying, but then there are certain environments where they aren't allowed to face negative consequences. And some of that's not good, because yeah, we want to cut out the negative stuff that's like the cyberbullying, but we also, we don't want everybody to get a version of an A because they tried.
Right.
That's really scary, because when you show up at work and and you're offered, and I've hear these stories all the time. I talk to hundreds and hundreds of people in the tech and business world every year, go around the world, about 24 conferences a year. And I hear things like, oh, well, we hired somebody, good degree, good school. And then they decided that they were going to do 3 of the 10 things that we said they needed to do for their first, job. Like, they just thought it was up to them. Like, oh, I'll just do those because I want to do those. I don't want to do those. And it's like, holy cow, like, what world are we living in, right? But then they get some negative feedback like, hey, you need to do all 10. And they think, oh, I'm out of here. This isn't a job for me. And that's sadly that, that only lasts for so long, in a highly competitive world.
Right.
Right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
You really gotta, I get it. I mean, maybe it's the wrong job for you, but I think it's more like, yeah, in school, I could just kind of tell my teacher, I'll do these 3 things really good and these other things I'm not going to do, and I'll just pass. Right. But that's not how the tech business world works.
That's either not how the world works.
Or you don't, right?
Yes. Yes.
You did it well or you did it bad. And if you did it bad, you probably won't get another job there or another project.
Well, as an educator, probably, I know I'm preaching to the choir for those that are listening live right now or watching the replay. But when we talk about keeping our kids protected from some of those negative consequences, I think that we are doing our kids a disservice because when we try to protect them from that, we remove the opportunity for reflection and growth from that process. Right. What do you think about like the importance of reflection when you talk about staying on target and also about goals?
So I do this in my life. Like there are times when I don't come through for myself, on my goals. And I am always asking myself, okay, what do I need to do better? When my son, he, gets something wrong, he's at the age where everything's like either the biggest deal in the world or it doesn't matter. And when it's the biggest deal in the world because he, I said, look, you got to rewrite that, you got to rewrite it, man. I can't read it. And it's like, oh no, the world's ending. And it's like, I just stopped him short. I'm like, hey, stop. This is not the world ending. This is rewriting a piece of paper. Okay, let's put it in context. So a lot of it's, let's help our students, let's help the people we're working with put things in context. And once they get a context, they take a deep breath, then it's a matter of helping them go, okay, well, why? A lot of times, I think this whole reaction is just, look, I'm checking this box so I can move on to the next thing. And that's all that matters. And sadly, that's something to do with our whole syllabus, let's get through the syllabus and matriculate thing, right? I mean, in a way, that's what we're teaching, right? Just pass through. And so, there's not an easy answer to that. So
well, and let me just say this too, Zachary, you're absolutely right. That's how it's been for a long time. It's like, let me get through my lessons, let me get through my curriculum, especially because there's a test, I got to get through it, instead of really evaluating and reflecting if the students, first of all, learned it, how well they mastered it. And what we're seeing right now, lately, in the last, I'd say probably 5 to 8 years in education, is this shift towards creativity and innovation. And it's really starting to pick up speed right now. And so teachers are having to change their practices. Districts are changing their practices to give time for kids to think about a problem and not spoon feed the answer. And the kids, they have no stamina down because they're like, oh, this is too hard.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, so I just came back, let's see, it was about 3 weeks ago. I was in Austin for Salesforce Foundation's Higher Ed Summit. And there were about 1,500 university CIOs, educators at this summit talking about not just the technology, not the platform per se, but the message which Salesforce and many of those organizations are trying to deal with, which is disruption and innovation of education. So a lot of universities, including some names that are really, really big, like Harvard University, the man who wrote the book on innovation, The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen spoke, and he teaches in the business school there. And Clayton, the way I saw Clayton teaching this whole concept of how organizations, how industries get disrupted, is that they become top heavy and they become defensive, and they don't want to change for a lot of reasons. And then a competitor will come along and serve a new need that they don't want to meet, and they'll do it more effectively, right? And then all of a sudden they can't catch up. So he's talking to a bunch of contemporaries, universities, and some K through 12 folks, and he's saying, hey, I'm at Harvard Business School. We have a $35 billion endowment. I wrote a book about innovation. I'm teaching innovation right now to everyone. I'm a little bit concerned about us. So should you be? And everybody in the audience is like, yeah, like it's hitting them. Like, yeah, if Harvard's worried, we're worried. Like, and we need to change. And where does this all come from? Well, it comes from the fact that all of the regular everyday tasks, even technical tasks, are being automated now. Why? Well, because the processing power in a computer and a phone is more powerful than what we had in the space shuttle in the 80s. Okay? So, like, we're getting to the point where computers will write emails for you. So what is valuable? Well, creativity, right? Thinking through problems that computers can't naturally process, like they don't have the natural language processing to do yet. And coming up with stuff that is you individually contributing value, not checking off a menial task. So our education is woefully, this is the message from that summit, we are woefully behind in being able to teach this stuff because we don't know how to measure it. We don't think, we're also serving an industry and a job market that is, if it hasn't already passed, is passing, right?
Right.
And so, and we're kind of stuck. And so you see people looking for alternatives. And to be honest, that's why I've had Kieran in the private education that he has here at home, because I'm trying to teach him how to be an individual that, you know, logs in, engages with content, talks with his teachers, goes out, does stuff in the real world with people of all kinds of ages, you know. And yeah, he's going to go to an academy probably for high school or middle school, but like, to get some more engagement with other math and science stuff. But like, that was really important to me. So I know I'm rambling, but
no, it's good ramble. This is good ramble.
Corruption is going on. And when I'm talking with some of the university folks, they were asking me, like, Zach, could you come up and talk to us? I'm like, well, I talk to tech companies. Like, yeah, but you're talking about innovation and disruption. This is a message we need to hear, you know? And so I think it's helpful for all of us, even if your district or your particular school isn't going to measure what you do, you're going to have an impact that matters for a long time in those students' lives if you're training, if you get them through their subjects, but you're training them to think creatively, think through innovation, think about the world as it is, not as it was.
I love that answer. Absolutely love that answer. And I do think that is definitely the call of EduGladiators, is to help usher in this whole new era, this whole new mindset of how we approach education. We actually have a question.
Sure.
Zachary, from Corey, who's listening in. Thank you, Corey. And I think it ties in great with what you were just talking about. As a visionary, he says, when you know you own the virtuous path, how do you interact with functionaries who stand in your way? So whether it's corporate or whether you're working in a school and you're doing these cool, innovative things and you just don't see it growing in your school or in your district, how do you work through those that are standing in your way?
Sure. So, and this is the issue with any change, right? So you can apply a new curriculum, or you could apply a new technology to a company. But it's not usually the curriculum and it's not usually the technology that's the problem. It's a people thing. And so when you're dealing with people who don't want to change, first of all, recognize that we all don't want to change in certain areas of our lives. So we can always bring it home, right?
Right.
So have empathy for the other person. When you try to lead, what you are doing is showing a vision of the future by telling a story and inviting others to join you in going there to meet that need. So you see a need, you see an opportunity, you see a circumstance, and you tell a story about what that is in such a way that the people who are standing here and are afraid to move can begin to understand what it might look like to be there. Then you that's creating context, right? And then you dialogue. You don't say, okay, now move. What you say is, now can you tell me what you see from where you're standing? You begin to listen. And once you've listened, you earn relational capital. And you can begin to spin that by speaking truth with love. Never just speak truth without love, because if you don't care about the other person, they aren't going to care about you. They aren't going to care about where they need to go. And it's also not helpful just to love the person and listen and feel for them without speaking the truth. If you're telling them things they want to hear that aren't true, you aren't loving them. So you got to do both. And when you do this, what you find is you're going to have champions, people who are going to be advocates for you. You won't win everybody, but you build a coalition, a team, little Lord of the Rings, you know, your 9 people, right? Or whatever, your squad. And what you do is you facilitate conversation with them and you empower them in their spheres to have change around them. And you'll get to a tipping point where the powers that be, right? Hopefully you'll begin to get that C-level support or your administrative support at the top that will go, hey, we've got something here. Mm-hmm. And then you as a group and you as a leader, don't abdicate your role as a leader. We're really big into like leading as a team, and that's important. But we're sort of, I think, at a point where we're starting to forget that it's actually a backlash against, I have a degree in leadership, and there was about 70 years where we thought that leaders had inherent gifts and skills because we could identify clear leaders. We were like, well, why are they a leader? Then we went through about 30 years, 20 years where we said, no, that's not true. Anybody can be a leader. So there aren't real true leaders. And we're having this back and forth conversation in society. But truly, a leader is a person who has the ability to see something that needs to be done, and they are able to gather through their influence, their personal influence, enough people to go begin to attend to it. So we need those leaders to then walk forward with the group. So yeah, you got to go with people and you got to build the relational capital by listening and speaking truth with love.
And as educators, we say this all the time, that kids have to know that you care before they can really not only learn from you, but even want to learn from you. And I hear you saying the same thing, Zachary, even with adults.
Well, yeah. I mean, I look around the room, no matter where I am, and I go, you know, all these people were in grade school at some point with me, you know, in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like there's the kid who's, you know, hogging the basketball, and there's the girl who cares a little bit too much about what's going, you know, and we got all these personalities, but now we're just all adults and we're all adulting. But you know, people are people, and they respond to the same things. It's just, you know, now we got some more framework and rules about how we're allowed to talk to one another and relate. But in each of those frameworks, you can still speak truth. You can still care about them. You still create context with the limited amount or more that you get. It's up, you know, you just got to have the ability to recognize your circumstances and speak into them.
So we've talked about tonight, you know, how to stay on target. We've talked about ways to stay on target, creating goals, creating action steps, reflection, the power of positivity. During our chat on Saturday, my partner in crime with EduGladiators Saturday chat, Ryan Jackson, answered one of your questions saying that, and he had a great visual, humans are 70% H2O. Like water, we're designed to take the path of least resistance. So we have to commit to goals so we can transcend.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good metaphor. So some people, there's an Eastern thought about like, well, I just let the water flow around me, or I float with the water like a jellyfish. But then some people like, we're goal oriented in this conversation. So it's like a salmon swimming upstream, right? It's got somewhere to go, and it's not easy. But when it gets there, there's a good reward for that. So, I think it's a good answer. We don't like to change. Change is tough. And sadly, the world around us is always changing. So it's always bringing its intensity upon us. But if you just stay there, you aren't actually going to just stay there. You're actually going to move backwards or decay. The only way to grow and to be strong is to push against that current, against that world that's pushing down and around you. And you'll begin to build the strength. You'll begin to attain new places, and people will be blessed by it. I think something that he's saying, the attrition, or rather the component that goes with that is that people around you don't like change, and they don't like it when you change. And you go, well, why? Why is it like if I say, oh, I'm getting married, and everybody's like, oh, well, why? Oh, that's great. Or, you get all kinds of mixed answers. Or if you have a job change and you're going to have to move, and they're like, oh, I'm so happy for you, but not really. And you go, why? Well, the answer is because their world, you're a part of it, and that part of it is now saying, I'm going to change. That means that now they think selfishly, my world's changing and I don't like that. So I will make this person a family member, a coworker, or somebody somebody in my community group. They are changing, and therefore it's not for them. We get selfish and we go, gosh, now my life is changing. I don't like that. So it's easier for me to try to tell them not to change so I don't have to deal with my life. Plus, when other people change in a positive way, it asks us to look inside and say, why am I not growing? Why am I not changing? And that's tough stuff. So I think our goal setting, you're going to face those challenges of your community, of folks that aren't necessarily for you at first. But the funny thing is whenever you get where you're going to that next step, right, that next goal, those people are the first to go, oh, well, this is so great. I'm so happy for you.
Or I knew you could do it.
Right, I knew you could do it. It's like, yeah.
In tonight's Impact Matters chat, I was able to pop in for a little bit, and you were talking about stigma.
Yeah.
And as we were, as I was, participating in the chat and thinking about our time together tonight, I feel that there is a certain stigma in goals and setting your goals and creating that action plan. How do we move past that stigma of change, basically?
Yeah. So I think, okay. So to move past the stigma of change, the negative perception of change, is to realize that, one, you don't have a choice. The world we live in now does not afford us a choice. Some of that's tough to deal with, especially for folks that have been around on Earth for a bit. Things didn't change as fast 30 years ago, but that is not the case today, and it's only going to get faster for a while. We may mellow out in about 15, 20 years when a lot of things kind of stabilize again. Technology will reach a point. You can only process stuff so fast. You can only achieve certain levels of efficiency, and then all of a sudden people are just living regular life again. But for this next 10, 15 years, it's only going to spin up faster and faster. And so folks that are trying to hide from that, it's not going to go well, right? So there is a negative stigma that they will place on those who are adopting this change, whether it's technology or, doing a job differently or changing the way we educate our kids. It's going to be tough for those folks. But the way you get over a stigma is, one, by becoming educated, allowing yourself to understand what is going on. You don't have to agree with it, but if you understand it, your fears of what you think it could be or it might be go away. So a lot of it really just comes down to self. I always think it goes to the heart, right? Selfishness or fear. It's all about protection of this heart. And so a lot of this is I'm afraid of something that I don't understand. And if you educate yourself, then at least if you disagree, you're on stable footing to at least, okay, I know where I stand. And then the other thing is, and this goes with the human side of it, put yourself in situations where you can see the positive benefit from the thing you're afraid of, this change, this stigma. And then all of a sudden, your perspective will become more educated, but your perspective becomes more positive. You know, and it goes back to, let's go back just to the very beginning. When I meet somebody, I'm trying to figure out what it is that they are about. What do you love? Why do you do what you do? I'm trying to discover, who are you as a 2-year-old? Who are you as a 12-year-old kid? Who are you as a young adult? Regardless of your age, I'm trying to find out, what is that person there? And when you discover what somebody loves and why they love it, then you can begin to understand how to love them and how to love this new changing scenario that you used to be afraid of. So yeah, it's really, but that asks you to open your heart and asks you to put yourself out there, right? And that's scary, but it's really rewarding. It's really rewarding. I've rarely faced negative consequences for being that kind of person.
And I think if you have family, or if you have friends or whomever that's trying to, maybe stand in your way, or bring up some of those, I don't want you to change. I think it's important to have enough confidence in yourself to know, like, okay, I feel this is good for me, and I'm going to take that leap of faith and I'm going to try it,
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
and if it doesn't work, then I can go back and try again, make a few tweaks and try again.
Einstein said that, the key to genius for him, as he understood it, was that he just didn't give up. I mean, essentially, and so that was something I picked up pretty early on, is that, when you think through tough stuff, a lot of folks just kind of give up, or they get told no. And so they kind of give it a couple shots and they're done, right? So kids might try math problem a couple times. They're like, you know what? It's too painful to keep trying. It's more painful to keep trying than the pain that will be caused by getting this answer wrong, right?
Right.
And so Einstein's kind of like, I don't know, I just rather chew on this for a bit, right? And everybody said he was crazy. That's kind of an interesting thing. Like, a lot of people, we look at Einstein now, we're like, oh, what a great guy. He was pretty awesome. But this guy was saying stuff that people were, he arrived at a lot of his conclusions that we all take for granted now about the speed of light and all that, and energy. He arrived at those things by just imagining. He wondered, what would it be like if I was on a motorcycle riding next to a beam of light? So he didn't get out his, chalkboard and start scribbling down math. He was thinking through this stuff, like, well, what's my perspective? And a lot of people wondered, like, what in the world are you thinking about, man? And eventually he got around to chalkboarding it all out and had help doing that. But it took him like 10 years. So, for us, as we're dealing with change, it's allowing us to face failure. Companies, the companies that continue to succeed are the ones that allow for failure. They don't demand a certain standard of success. They are willing to look towards success by going through the process of experimentation and failure. And to take it back to education, are we allowing our youth to work in environments where they're allowed to experiment and fail, right, towards success? Or are we saying, memorize this stuff, get it right, and now let's move on? Because to me, there's not a whole lot of like experimentation and learning and wondering. I don't have time to figure out why. I don't have time to wonder about what. All I need to know is X, Y, and Z, nail the test and move on to the next one. And that's a little scary, right? If the world I'm describing that's coming or is here,
it's here.
we're passing folks on into it. Yeah. And yeah, so that's a real challenge. And I admire groups like EduGladiators, and a lot of the education chats, because you're all working on this issue together. You're collaborating together across departments, across education fields, up and down the stack, whether you're in second grade or you teach college math or whatever, you're coming together because you're change agents and you want to see your kids, you want to see the future succeed. And I love that.
Absolutely. You know, when you mentioned Einstein, I've been watching this Nat Geo.
Yes. I haven't seen that.
Is it a documentary? Oh,
that.
you have to watch it. You have to watch it. For those of you that are listening, if you have not seen, it's called Genius on Nat Geo. I'm sure you can stream it either from the site or from Hulu or whatever you might use to watch any past episodes. This is like a must see, because just what you were saying, Zach, because he thought of things and he imagined and he literally wanted time to just think. That's what he wanted to do, to just think about these problems. It was really hard because, of course, school was very regimented back then, even more so than what we've ever experienced. And he was considered an outsider and not for what he brought to the table, but admonished for disrupting the status quo.
I did not fit in school. When I was in grade school, I realized that I wanted to homeschool my kid even before I knew what that was. And because my education experience wasn't going that great, I was so bored. And then I got two teachers in 5th and 6th grade, and one in particular, Dana Butler, and she was experimenting with the new education pattern. And so they took 5th and 6th grade, so they'd start out with one class and they walked them through the last 2 years of grade school. And she taught English. And she took us from the entire writing process. She taught us how to do communication methods, how to round robin, how to whiteboard, how to brainstorm, how to complete a book, all kinds of things. But in this process of having 2 years, she allowed creativity. She allowed experimentation, right? And I learned so much in those 2 years that when I went to middle school, I was so bored out of my mind. I literally would just go in and put my head on a desk and wait for the period. And I think I had like a 1.4 GPA. And it didn't get much better. It didn't get much better in high school until I realized I had to graduate. But I got to tell you, the teachers like Dana that would give me a chance, right, to grow, to experiment, that's where I found joy in my education. And so if you're out there and you're taking risks and you're wondering, is this going to pay off with my administration because I'm taking a different tack on school? I know that those people that did that in my life were what kept me going. Otherwise, I think I would have dropped out.
Absolutely. We have one last question, Zachary. This has been so fun. We have one last question in our chat, and it's from Corey. Corey, thanks for asking these great questions. He asks, when do you quit pushing a rock up the hill? Maybe seek a new rock or a new hill. In other words, how do you know when to stop investing?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's important, at least for me. I come from a place, and this is my faith background, so I won't preach at anybody, but this is how I answer it. So I believe that it's always okay to self-sacrifice so long as you're doing it for the right reason. So in other words, achieving success outwardly may never actually happen. But so long as you're doing it for the right reason, you are welcome to it. And I believe you'll be rewarded for it, right? At the end, and in other ways, and perhaps, in an eternal sense. I think that sometimes we think that success is because you actually achieved, hey, we got the entire school curriculum changed and we're doing it different now. Well, it might change. It just might change in 3 generations. Right. That doesn't mean you were a failure. Now, when is it time to pivot? If you're looking to see some incremental success, if you want to see that rocket pushed up, well, I would say if you've exhausted the relationships and your ambassadors, the people that you have influence with that also want to see change, if you've exhausted that and you realize that coming from within out isn't going to achieve success, but rather you need to come along from the side by working with maybe a para organization, right? A nonprofit perhaps that's job is to disrupt education, or to go with a tech company, or maybe you need to go and go as a thought leader, right? And say, hey, I just had this experience. It was really challenging. Now I'm going to write a book and go speak. So that's when you realize you've exhausted your internal resources and you don't see an inflow. You don't see any leadership support at all. In which case, then don't give up on the concept. Just attack it from a different angle.
Well, and you know what? I'll add to that, Zachary. Also understand that success looks differently. So your idea of success of a goal may be different than what that success actually is, but it doesn't mean that you weren't effective in trying to reach your goals as well. And I love what you said about making sure you're doing it for the right reasons. So for those of you that are listening in live or watching the replay, Zachary and I were talking before we went live tonight, and we're Facebook friends as well. And so he gets to keep up with the progress of my boys.
Yeah.
And one of the things that their dad and I talk about often is that, sometimes our success, again, might be incremental in our lifetime, but because we're working towards that and we have that mindset, that it manifests itself in our kids. So for instance, my husband, he was not able to maybe get all the offers that, one of my sons have right now, because he was coming from a small town, Louisiana, and, everything went through your coaches, and he still was able to have a great education for free based on his ability to play baseball. And I would always remind him, but it's because of that journey that he went through, that if he keeps, sharing this with the boys and helping them understand and groom them outside of just playing their sport, that when it's their time, he'll see his success through them. And he's seeing that right now. And that's what makes me like super, super happy as a mom, is because I see them living out not only what they have dreamt of doing, playing their sport of choice, but what my journey and my mindset, how that has played into these opportunities coming forth for them.
And so this is, yes, absolutely. This is a concept of pioneering.
Yes.
So whenever you're a pioneer, that is, you're the first into a situation. Oftentimes, there is no road, and you're breaking through, and you're discovering it, and you have the courage and the willingness and the faith, and go through all the trials and tribulations of doing that. But you oftentimes won't get the success that those folks that will come after you. This happens in business. You might have been the first to develop the computer, but 2 or 3 others came along behind you, said, oh, we could do that. Let's do it 10 times better. And then they get the financial reward. You got the joy of pressing into a reality and building something that had never been built. You got to lay the groundwork for those who would ever come after you, right?
Absolutely.
And you got a different kind of joy. You didn't come in monetary form, probably didn't come in all the invitations to go do this and that. But you got to be there. You got to see the crest. You got to see the forward moment, and you get the joy, right, of seeing, in your case, your kids. And that's really, as teachers, if you're doing this and you see the reality I was describing happening out in the business technology world, and you are taking a risk by taking some time from your syllabus and curriculum to engender some of these creative moments, to give them opportunities to fail when the system doesn't want them to fail. If you're doing that, it may be a thankless moment now, but when they're 25 or 30 and employed, right?
Yeah.
That is the moment where you're going to be smiling, because they're set up for the world that is and is coming.
Absolutely. My last mom story. So yesterday, as my oldest son is finishing up his school year, they're taking finals, and he'll be a senior next year, and he has all these opportunities. We were just wrapping up dinner, and I was just on my computer, and he passed by and gave me a hug, and he just thanked me. He just stopped, gave me a hug, and he said, "Thank you for an amazing childhood." Like, I feel so prepared
did that
to take the next step. Oh yeah, and I'm not a crier, but I was like, And I asked him, I said, "Did you really had a great childhood?" Because he's about to be 18, and he's bigger than I am, and he could pick me up. And he was like, "Mom, why would I not have had a great childhood?" You guys have been everything, and it's been the best, and I feel ready. I feel ready for whatever my next looks like at whatever
Wow.
school. And same as a teacher, you know, when our kids come back to visit and visit us after they've graduated or after they've left our building, and to talk about, you know, what their accomplishments are, to me, goal has been met, goal has been exceeded when they
Yes.
can come back and do that. So yeah, it's awesome. Oh my gosh, I just have chills right now. I love speaking with you, Zachary, and thanks everyone that tuned in live today. And if you're watching the replay as well, definitely share out the link. The replay will be open, and share with your network and your friends, because, you know, staying on target is about all those things.
Yep.
It's about having goals, it's about having dreams, setting goals to reach those dreams, reflection, staying on target, pushing past those challenges, and understanding that success comes in lots of forms. And long as we are successful, and our kids, if your teachers are successful, you know, that is the ultimate goal, because we're team kids, you know. And I just thank you, Zachary, so much for leading our chat on Saturday, and speaking with us all tonight.
You bet. It's pure joy. I love it.
Hey, Zachary, how can others follow along with Impact Matters and follow along to what you're doing? Or maybe if you're speaking somewhere or are doing other cool things, how can they follow along with you?
Sure. So I think the world's biggest group chat is on Twitter. And I know there's a lot of noise on Twitter, but if you connect with the folks that are actually talking, it's great. So that's the first place. And it's just my name right down there at the bottom, Zachary Jeans, one word. And literally just say, hey, you know, saw you on EduGladiators, or, you know, had another question, wondered. That's it. That's a really easy way. I'm very going to respond right away. Another way is just reach out by email. Again, it's just my name at Gmail. And yeah, I do. I speak at tech conferences. I work with businesses. I come in and do, I can come in and talk to folks and help you walk through what you're going through. A lot of what we do is just, it's leadership, right? It's just helping you walk through these challenges and thinking through your situation. So I'm happy to think with you. I'm happy to think with you out loud, and yeah, just enjoy the journey into this crazy world that we're in.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Zachary. And thank all of you for joining in tonight live or watching the replay. This Saturday, EduGladiators is on break for the holiday, and we will return on June 3rd. We'll return on June 3rd. And we are approaching EduGladiators for our summer months Ed Camp style, in that we have different folks, some of our core warriors for EduGladiators, that will be leading the chats for the summer on topics that they're passionate about. Also, some great warriors have reached out and asked, how can I get involved with EduGladiators? How can I do this? How can I lead this? And so we have a summer filled with some amazing guest hosts from our core warriors, and to some of our warriors each Saturday that are really stepping up in the arena and talking about ed topics that they're passionate about, so we can continue to usher in this new era of leadership, of engagement, and of course, advocacy for our students and also for our profession based on what's best for kids. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Thank you again, Zachary. And we will see everyone back on June 3rd.